Hello and welcome to One Wheel Thoughts, the part of the show where the unicycle comes out and you think. I don't know, I thought once. It didn't really work out for me. But, rocks. Let's see. Rocks. Thoughts. So I really love thinking about the concept of freedom. I'm gonna turn right up here. I have no idea where that leads. Whew. I think that's just a loop that goes back to where I was. So I'm gonna turn right. I was really thinking about the concept of freedom, and it's quite interesting because, like, what if you ask most people, they say, "What is freedom?" And people will say, "Well, the ability to do what I want." And I'm like, okay, we can use that definition of freedom. Is this a fundamental right, a fundamental truth? And it's like, okay, we can even say that. What other fundamental rights, fundamental truths exist? And are there any that do not violate this fundamental truth of and right towards freedom? And I'd like to ask you, is it freedom for me to go kill someone? You see, because, like, if I want to do that, it'd be under my right as a free man to decide and go kill someone. Oh, look at those mushrooms. But everyone's going to say no, because you violate the freedom of another. If you kill someone, they are no longer free to do as they wish. In which case, violating the right of freedom is not good. But the difficulty there is this freedom then cannot be a natural right, cannot be a subsistent right, because it violates itself. Now, you could say, okay, maybe this definition of freedom is something that we ought to strive for, with the caveat of not affecting someone else. And it's like, okay, that's a valid reason, a valid thought. So how can we do it without violating someone else's rights? Okay, so anything that doesn't affect other people is something that I could hold by right as my freedom. What about myself? You see, because do we actually know what we want? Do we actually know what it is that we desire and long for? No. We in fact struggle with that. You know, there's something that I want today that I might not want tomorrow. Well, there's something that I want, which is, let's see, physical health. I want to be able to do stuff, like ride around on a unicycle. In shorts that are now riding up because, whatever, I give myself wedgies. But I want the freedom to be able to do this. But I also really like ice cream, and I really like desserts, and things that taste good, and food. And so I want to have the freedom to eat whatever I want. But the exercise of my freedom to do what I want in terms of food violates my freedom to do what I want in terms of physical exercise. For if I gorge myself on bad foods all day, I can grow fat, I can become unhealthy, my cardiovascular health will fail such that I can't talk and ride at the same time, and I'm destroying that freedom that I wanted. So this idea of freedom to do whatever you want is not a self-sufficient, it's not a self-subsistent understanding. It cannot be a fundamental value because of its self-violating nature. And so you could be like, okay, maybe freedom isn't a real thing. We have to rely on some law, some truth, that freedom can be exercised so long as it doesn't violate those things. And because it's not a fundamental right, then the paradoxical contradictions of freedom to unicycle and freedom to gorge myself on food to the point of obesity, that's not an issue because it's not the fundamental truth. And those are the subjective choices that one individual makes. But I would counter that, what if there were another understanding of freedom? A freedom that is not insufficient, that is more self-sufficient. A freedom that connects to some underlying fundamental truths without violating those same truths in the expression of freedom that we thus derive. So this freedom Well, it couldn't be the freedom to do whatever I want, because my wants change, and the want of today might violate the want of tomorrow. And so, that's clearly just problematic. So what if our freedom was, instead of a freedom to do as we want, but a freedom to choose how we do what we ought? Okay, I just came up with that phrasing right in the moment. Oh, rocks again. I'll try not to fall. But the freedom to choose how we do what we ought. Now that is an interesting prospect, because it relies on this more fundamental value of truth, ought, right and wrong. And it relies on those subsistent truths to define what freedom is. And thus, we cannot violate this definition of freedom, because to do what we ought is a right and wrong. From the principle of non-contradiction, there cannot be something that is both right and wrong in the strictest sense of the word. It's like some very specific topic that's not both right and wrong. You can have gray spots, but not something that is both. This is 100% the moral thing to do, while at the same time 100% being not a moral thing to do. And because of this non-contradiction inherent in morality and right and wrong, this would necessitate that the freedom we have is not problematic. This freedom that we have derived from that wouldn't have the self-contradictory nature, because it is derived from a more self-sufficient framework. Now you can question what the moral framework is, like what things are this or what things are that, but that's a separate point entirely from freedom. So, freedom is the ability to choose how to do what we ought. And I think that's a really freeing thought, because, I couldn't tell you whether or not it's better for me, left and right, always choose right. I'm choosing left, that's a very steep hill. The freedom to do, the freedom to do what we ought is a very difficult one. So, who really knows? I lost my train of thought. But I think that this framework is more freeing, because we do not get so caught up in failing to be who I am, because who I am is to strive to something greater. And we get to choose how to do that. And we can fail at doing that. We can choose wrong paths. But that isn't violating our freedom. That is just violating the moral truths. Our freedom, this self-will, this free will, this self-understanding, an understanding of self, of choice, is not violated in that. And so it's actually really freeing, because even the most morally evil person is still a dignified human being with the freedom of choice and the freedom of self. And then the question of violating freedoms is not on the table. The table question is, what is the moral truth that we should be upholding through our freedom? And so, after this long discourse on freedom, I would just like to tell you, have fun, enjoy nature, it's beautiful, and don't be afraid to fall every once in a while, because sometimes a fall tells you that the choice you made may not have been the best one. For instance, to talk on a phone while unicycling over a bunch of rocks. That may not have been the best choice. But if you enjoyed this, tell me, because I know no one is listening to this point, so I'm just going to be done before it hits 10 minutes. Bye, and enjoy nature.